Welcome to the very first edition of Beginning Farmers and Ranchers. I'm Karen Gonzalez.
And I'm Dina Vera. With the help of ETX, we bring you the latest rural developments across South Texas.
Find out more on the history of wine, raising grapes, producing wine, and the innovative opportunities South Texas has with the Wild Horse Desert.
We will keep you updated here on Beginning Farmers and Ranchers.
Evidence of wine goes as far back as ancient China. From there, it was moved on from civilization to civilization. Follow me as I take you on a world tour on the usage of wine and the history South Texas has in the wine and grape industry.
The Rio Grande Valley is a region well known for its agricultural industry, but changing environmental and economic conditions have driven South Texas farmers to search for alternative crops, such as wine grapes. What was once seen as a simple hobby for some now has the potential to become a booming industry. People have always been passionate about their wine, but along the border, raising grapes requires more than passion. It's art, science, and hard work. Stay tuned to learn the history of this fruit in the world and in South Texas. The oldest fermented grape residue dates back to 7000 BC China, but it is in a cave in Armenia where evidence of modern winemaking methods was discovered. The 6,000-year-old site contained a wine press, fermentation vats, jars, and cups. We use similar wine production methods to this very day. We then move on to the Egyptian civilization in 3100 BC, where evidence showed that they were using wine-like substances derived from red grapes. The Egyptians then came in contact with the Phoenicians and exposed them to wine. The Phoenicians spread the grapevines throughout their trade routes across the Mediterranean, influencing the Greeks. Soon after, the Roman Empire grew and conquered the Greeks. They also embraced wine production. When the Romans adopted Christianity, they implemented wine in their religious practices. So as the Romans and Christianity grew in the European continent, so did the wine consumption and production. Wine was finally imported to the Americas by Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors. However, the first wine to be made in the United States was by French Huguenots during the late 1500s, near present-day Jacksonville, Florida. They attempted to make wine out of a native grapevine commonly known as muscadine grapes, which were infamous for their bad flavor. They stopped their attempt relatively quickly. 200 years later, winemaking really took hold in America. In 1769, the Spanish missionary Junipero Serra traveled from Mexico City to California to spread the gospel. And along with the missionary came Franciscan monks and their knowledge of winemaking. 36 years later, Sonoma's first winery was established. Now we know how wine was introduced to the Americas. But what about Texas? Or better question, what about South Texas? What history do we have with wines and vines here? Well, South Texas, along with many other coastal states, attempted to grow grapes, yet failed in large part to a bacteria known as Pearson's disease. This infection can kill entire vineyards. The bacteria travels into the plant's vascular system, blocking water and nutrients vital for the plant's survival. This bacteria is spread by insects called glassy-winged sharpshooters. Farmers and agriculturists have no control over these insects, so grape growing in these regions was very difficult. It wasn't until Rio Farms began their wine and grape research project in 1998 that Pearson's disease was no longer a limiting factor for the growth of the wine and grape industry in South Texas. Rio Farms was founded in South Texas in 1941, originally an organization established by the government to help beginning farmers after the Great Depression. They turned their attention to education and agricultural research during the 1970s. Andy Scott, Rio Farms Director of Research, and his colleague Maurice James Lukfar began a project that found two grape varieties that were resistant to the infection, Blanc du Bois and Black Spanish. Thanks to the years of tireless research, grape growing in South Texas is now possible. Rio Farms also produced grapes for an award-winning wine bottled by Chisholm Trail Winery in Fredericksburg, Texas. According to Paula Williamson, owner of Chisholm Trail Winery, the award-winning wine that she produced could have had an AVA label from South Texas if only we had one. This could add credibility and distinction to the Rio Grande Valley. An AVA is an American viticultural area that is officially designated as a grape-growing region approved by the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. South Texas has the potential to become part of the wine industry. The next milestone for South Texas is a tentative AVA under the care of Rio Farms.
So now we know that South Texas can grow grapes, and it's all thanks to Rio Farms research. When we come back, Dina will inform us on how to raise grapes and the precautions needed to successfully grow vineyards.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
It's that time of season again in South Texas, a favorable climate for one type of fruit, grapes. In a few seconds, learn more about the types of grapes, planting, trellising, and disease preventions to make your vineyard a success with the help of Nora Garza from Dos Rios Farms. When you think of agriculture in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, oranges, grapefruit, and lemons quickly come to mind. Recent agricultural advancements have opened the door to a vast new market for South Texas, wine grapes. Thanks to research conducted on the Black Spanish and Blanc de Bois varieties of wine grapes by Rio Farms, Valley farmers have a positive outlook on the future of this potentially profitable crop. Black Spanish grapes are used to produce wine similar to a Merlot or Cabernet. Blanc de Bois is used to make dry or semi-sweet white wines. The vines of this multi-purpose fruit can last between 50 to 100 years.
Even if you look at it now, that side, the leaves are lighter. Those are the Blanc, and the leaves are darker overall on the Le Noir, which is the red one. And then, very interestingly, we have about 13 plants of Chardonnay, and they grow differently. It means it has a lot less leaves. They're more compact, and the leaf is much smaller, almost like a roundish leaf.
Black Spanish and Blanc de Bois can be grafted with the native Mustang and dogwood rootstocks to resist soil-borne diseases, such as the deadly cotton root rot known to lurk in vineyard soils. The rootstock provides the vines with nutrients vital for survival and successful production.
You make a graft and you get a new plant. The bottom is resistant to the root rot, and the top is the one that's resistant to the Pierce disease.
A critical component to the vine survival is a trellis, a support system usually consisting of a wooden post with wires attached that allow the vines to grow upward and outward. There are various types of commercial trellises, each different in cost, amount of wires, height, and shape. Trellises deter vines from becoming infected with diseases. Without sufficient ventilation, fungus can become a serious problem by lowering the yield and quality of grapes.
If you have a disease one year, it is guaranteed that it's going to come back next year. Okay. Guaranteed. And it's typically worse the next year without control.
Trellises also facilitate the harvesting process and keep grapes off the ground, away from wildlife.
There's always bees, of course, there's sugar, there's flowers, there's water. So bees and other animals are, just waiting for that opportunity.
To protect yourself from injuries, be sure to have the proper gear and equipment before stepping into the vineyard.
Grape razors. This is a little safer. You would think it wouldn't be easy to cut yourself with shears, but if you harvest, inevitably someone will do it.
Another harvesting facilitator is pruning. Too many buds are harmful to production. Pruning maintains grapevines in a consistent shape called training. It helps to increase fruit size, quantity, sugar content, and decreases exposure to two types of fungus, downy mildew and black rot.
From the photos we were looking at here earlier, those little brown lesions, that's black rot. If you've got good eyes and look close, you can see the little black pycnidia.
Pruning may not help prevent these diseases, but it does help keep fungus at bay. By pruning, you are removing limbs that are full of fungus spores and open the vine up to receive more sunlight and wind. In doing so, the vine's cut is dried and thus less vulnerable to spore infection. With no organic treatment to control black rot, copper is the best solution. A traditional and organic alternative to treat black rot is by individually picking berries.
Once all the leaves are gone, you're supposed to leave only about 3 nodes on each of the stems, so maybe 18 to 24 to 36 inches on each one of those.
First-year grapevines should not be allowed to bloom. It takes at least 2 to 4 years before grapes can be grown on mature vines. There are 2 common pruning methods, spur pruning and cane pruning, each with different distances between vines and fruitfulness.
Because you're trying to produce a balance of leaf growth, shoot growth to support the crop, and crop. You don't want there to be more leaves than needed, and you don't want there to be so much crop you can't ripen it.
The best time to prune is when grapevines are dormant, usually late winter. When plants are not dormant, pruning will cause the vines to bleed sap, hindering the plant's strength for growth. After winter pruning has been completed, summer harvest follows. A Brix test refractometer can be used to measure sugar. The sweeter the grape, the higher the alcohol content.
19.9.
Excellent, yes!
So,
Once the level of sweetness has reached its peak, the vineyard is left to rest during the warm season. But the work isn't over for the winemaker.
Once you start getting into the chilling of the wine and all of that stuff, it's pretty expensive. So it's definitely a learning process and a labor of love.
After the backbreaking labor has been completed, wine production follows. The harvested fruit is made into unique taste in wine. The long months of invested time and labor have come to a close in the vineyard. Now you have important points to start your vineyard, but the process doesn't end here. When we come back, learn more on the wine production process as I take you to the wine production site with Norma Sanchez from Monte Alto Vineyards.
Millions of people are affected by disaster in America. And we're right there, providing food. With more than 200 food banks, reaching communities all across America. Donate now for immediate relief and long-term recovery. Every dollar helps provide food for disaster victims. Help now at feedingamerica.org.
When I have an asthma attack, I feel like a fish with no water.
Learn how to prevent your child's next asthma attack. Because even one attack is one too many.
There is no time to rest for the winemaker. Stay seated as we explore the wine production process in Houston, Texas with Norma Sanchez. Vineyards were beyond the reach of South Texas farmers until advances in agri-tech made it possible. After harvesting, massive loads of grapes and microbins arrive at the wine production site. Some wineries may be rented under certain circumstances.
You have to have a contract, and there's another permit for that. And it's called the brand DBA contract. So I do have one with them, and yes, we do everything. But the grapes are mine. I just take them over there. It's like you're just renting the facility because you're using everything there.
Some co-ops lend growers a helping hand in acquiring resources to purchase equipment such as bins, conveyor belts, and testing tools, along with other machinery. The grapes are dumped in a crusher destemmer where the berries are separated from the stem. The berries are delivered onto a conveyor belt for second sorting. In the United States, commercial wine is required to be sterilized with sulfites to eliminate naturally occurring bacteria before beginning the fermentation process. Red and white grapes have different processes. White grapes are directly taken into a wine press after destemming. The grape juice will be separated from the solid material consisting of skins and seeds to form a liquid called must. Must is made up of sugar, acids, water, and flavor compounds. To extract tannins and flavors, the must of red wine ferments in the grape skins. This simple process differentiates it from white wine. After the red grapes have been destemmed, they are not directly pressed like white grapes. Instead, skins and juices are pumped directly into the fermentation tank.
Fermentation starts in about 24 hours. It's no longer juice anymore because fermentation started. You have to squeeze out the juice from the grapes and right away, pack it, whatever.
After various tests to check for sugar levels, acidity, and pH, must is then pumped into the tanks for fermentation. Wine needs to be at least 10% alcohol. A general rule of thumb claims that the alcohol content will be about half of the sugar content in the raw juice. Most winemakers shoot for juice with about 24% sugar content on a Brix test, which will yield about 12% alcohol content.
Not during the off season, but during the time when it's the harvesting season, because that's when you want to see all the equipment that is set up and what is used and what capacity depending on your acreage, so you can have an idea of the size of the machinery you're going to have to buy.
There are a variety of tanks to use for this process. Wood, stainless steel, or lime concrete tanks, and each with a different process for fermentation. Fermentation begins when the yeast is added, allowing sugars to convert into alcohol.
That can go on for about 7 days. That's the very first one. And that's where it's going to get to the maximum of the alcohol after you add all your ingredients also. During that period, that's when you add, if you're going to add oak chips or whatever you're going to add to your formula, it's going to be at that point. And when fermentation stops, it's at a halt. That means that it's reached the alcohol capacity that it's going to have in the wine, from 10 to 19%.
To produce rich colors and flavors in the red wine, skin should be left to soak in its must for a longer period of time, a process called maturation.
If you want it more tasting, you can add other blends of fruits, but you have to be very careful because some fruits are very high in acidity, as it is by their nature. And also some of them produce a lot of pectin, which is kind of a waxy substance that will make your wine look kind of like cloudy.
Throughout the fermentation process of red grapes, both carbon dioxide and skins rise to the top and float over the tank's surface. The floating grape skins form a dry cap over the juice. Heat can build up over time, and it is important to circulate and cool the wine frequently to maintain consistent temperatures. A winemaker can use one of two methods, a punch-down or a pump-over approach. A punch-down method punches down the cap at least twice a day to extract more from the grape skins. In the pump-over method, juice under the cap will be pumped over the grape skins in an effort to extract more pigments, tannins, and flavors. Once a wine has reached the desired color and intensity, the juice, or free run, is ready to be drained out and transferred into another tank without the grape skins. Remaining skins and pulp are manually removed and taken to a press to collect leftover juice. The juice extracted is called press wine and will be left to settle for several days in a different tank. The dried grape skins and seeds, called pomace, are used as compost. The fermentation process is complete at this point. The long-awaited aging process begins. The aging process differs for all wines. The process can take from 6 months to several years.
When your alcohol level comes to a halt, then you're ready to put them in the barrels, or are you going to put them on barrels or are you going to put them on carboys, which is a plastic container, something like barrels would do.
Once in a barrel, adjustments are made to the developing settlements that cloud the wine through a clarification and filtration process. The wine is now ready to be bottled, sealed, labeled, and shipped to the seller's location. After bottling, some wines may be taken back to the cellar for more maturation. The aging bottle of wine will be out of the cellar when the time is right to be opened and enjoyed with family and friends. Don't feel overwhelmed. Co-ops are always ready to help. When we come back, Karen Gonzalez uncovers opportunities awaiting for South Texas growers.
South Texas has produced grapes that have made award-winning wines. Yet, without an AVA label, the region cannot get its recognition. Stay tuned as we go over why this region has a great marketing potential, why an AVA is important, and what benefits we would receive from it.
Wine is one of the most civilized things in the world and one of the most natural things of the world that has been brought to the greatest perfection, and it offers a greater range for enjoyment and appreciation than possibly any other purely sensory thing. Ernest Hemingway. Wine can be made for home or commercial use. The Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association issued a final report in 2013 stating, "The wine and grape industry in Texas has contributed greatly to the economic strength of the state with an economic impact of $2 billion. Texas also ranked 5th in the United States in wine production. The state is divided into 5 wine and grape growing regions. Region 1, the Texas Panhandle with 5 wineries and 30 vineyards. Region 2, North Texas with 56 wineries and 37 vineyards. Region 3, Southeast Texas with 23 wineries and 26 vineyards. Region 4, West Texas with 4 wineries and 9 vineyards. And Region 5, Hill Country with 50 wineries and 49 vineyards. Texas also has 8 American Viticultural Areas, or AVAs. These AVAs are officially designated grape growing areas that are approved by the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. Within Region 3 lies South Texas, with no AVA. The Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association says South Texas has an excellent marketing potential for many wineries in the region. With its warm breezes and microclimate, it is an excellent location for growing wine grapes.
Okay, an AVA, that stands for American Viticulture Area. And you start out with surveying the area that you want the federal government to consider as a grape growing region. We have it done in the Texas Hill Country. For instance, this bottle I'm about to release tomorrow, I can put the AVA on it, Texas Hill Country, because all the grapes in this bottle were grown here in the Texas Hill Country in that AVA. I understand that the federal process starts with the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax Trade Bureau, which if you go online, that is ttb.gov. And you start with an application with your survey, and then they have all the rules and regulations that you need to follow to be awarded a grape growing region. And the Valley has been growing grapes for years, so that would be wonderful for the Valley. And instead of, for instance, this wine, I can put Texas on it because all the grapes came from Texas. It took a gold medal and best of show. I could have put the Valley's AVA on it, and that would have brought so much attention to the Valley as a grape growing region. Why the AVA is important to put on the bottle is my consumer comes in, my consumer is just enamored with this wine, takes it home, and then we tell them here all the grapes are grown in the Texas Hill Country.
Pearson's disease was the greatest limiting factor for commercial grape production in South Texas. However, Real Farms discovered a solution by using 2 grape varieties that are resistant to the infection, Blanc du Bois and Black Spanish. Real Farms was founded in 1941. According to Andy Scott, it was originally an organization that was founded by the government to help beginning farmers and agriculture after the Great Depression. However, in 1972, they had a slight turn in their mission. Real Farms turned into an 18,000-acre private farming organization that focused on education and agricultural research. Farmers remain unsettled by a fungal infection called cotton root rot. Real Farms and Texas AgriLife Extension Service provide alternatives to manage and avoid cotton root rot by grafting to resistant rootstock. So now we know that grapes can be grown in South Texas. And we also know that diseases that had farmers hesitant with grape growing can certainly be worked around with. So why doesn't South Texas have their own AVA designation? The only thing standing in the way is the lengthy process and the paperwork that has to be done. Rio Farms and AgriLife Extension are in the midst of informing farmers about the new crop. Rio Farms, along with the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, are attempting to create an AVA for the South Texas Rio Grande Valley region, which includes Starr, Willacy, Cameron, and Hidalgo counties. As previously mentioned, a tentative AVA for South Texas has been placed under Rio Farms' care, with the possible name of the Wild Horse Desert. According to Tom A. Fort, senior historian of the Museum of South Texas History, the term Wild Horse Desert was applied to the area from the Rio Grande up to the Nueces River. He explained why the term Wild Horse Desert was applied to the area and also gave his opinion about the AVA's potential name.
It derived from herds of wild Mustang horses that ran away from Spanish ranches in what is now Mexico. And as the Spanish populations grew and the ranches grew, more and more horses were being raised, and more because there were no fences. Usually escaped and ran away. Many of them crossed the Rio Grande and began to just propagate in what is now South Texas. And by the early 1800s, travelers and soldiers who began to come through the area noted all of these herds of wild horses, and because the area was very dry, the term desert was often applied to such areas, whether they look like a sandy desert or not. This one obviously doesn't. But the term wild horse desert began to show up on maps and in reports about the area. It's an old traditional term for the region, and in many ways it sums up the ranching and livestock industry heritage down here.
So the possibilities and opportunities are here. The valley can grow and produce grapes for home or commercial use and be nationally recognized if the AVA is approved. At the moment, Rio Farms is working on informing, helping, and educating beginning farmers to become part of this new industry that could flourish and add to the valley's economic growth and rural development.
The Rio Grande Valley has the possibility of flourishing into a larger industry with the help of the Wild Horse AVA label.
That wraps up today's show. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned with UTRGV's Beginning Farmers and Ranchers.
For more information, visit the VTX website. I am Karen Gonzalez.
And I'm Dina Vera.
Until next time.